one of the novels written as part of the massive interconnected Star Trek litverse that carried us through the gap between Nemesis and Picard. This book was one of the ones I missed the first time around, but one I wanted to read as it introduced one of my all-time favorite literary-only Trek characters, Teresa Chen. A half Vulcan, not at all raised with the discipline of logic, she has always stuck out to me as a unique character within the Trek universe. Set in what is now known as the first splinter timeline of the Trek universe, this book takes place after the death of Admiral Janeway and several encounters with the Borg of that timeline. When the USS Rhea is sent to investigate a distant area of space, she encounters both the assimilated USS Einstein, thereafter dubbed the Frankenstein, and life forms Chen comes to call No Angels. Following the vessel's apparent assimilation, Chen finds herself on the world of Marivel. Taking place after the novel Before Dishonor, the story introduces the crew of the Enterprise E following the attack of the Borg supercube under the command of Admiral Janeway, now assimilated by the Borg. Featuring legacy characters Captain Picard, Worf, Geordi, Guinan, and Dr. Crusher, they are joined by several literary-only characters as well as coming to assume the final configuration of Picard's command staff following the departure of Lieutenant Leibenzon and Counselor T'Lana. Most significant is the addition and debut of Lieutenant Teresa Chen, a character with a unique viewpoint and a great sense of humor. Chen is one of the few characters in Trek I've encountered with the unique characteristic I like to call verbal diarrhea. Unable sometimes to keep anything that pops into her mind from coming out her mouth, most often this is seen in quirky characters that tend to stand out, and such is the case with Chen. Sent to investigate the reappearance of the USS Einstein, last seen assimilated by the Borg during the assault from the supercube, the Enterprise E returns to its last known location along with the only crew member who survived the assault on the Rhea, Teresa Chen. Ordered to find and destroy the assimilated ship by any means necessary, they are issued the rare transphasic torpedoes and sent to prevent it from acquiring slipstream technology before it's too late. I was really eager to read this book, admittedly to see where Teresa Chen came from. Most of the time, books about the Borg and the majority of episodes are guaranteed hits with me, but this book suffers slightly, from no fault of its own, from coming after some of these less than stellar entries in my personal opinion. Now, while I didn't care much for the preceding novel, in which case I felt it was not in sync with the Borg or the Trek litverse in general, I also didn't enjoy the way Captain Janeway was killed off, which to me seemed just not fitting of the character. For that matter, her entire plot arc in the book just didn't make sense to me. But other than some early references to the last two Borg plotlines, the book improved steadily as it progressed. Having read some of Christopher Bennett's work before, I knew enough to know I liked his writing style as well as his handling of Lieutenant Chen. Well written and focused, the novel brings back Guinan to the Enterprise E, as well as, at least in my opinion, serving to correct things as a whole. The Enterprise E crew had long lacked the cohesion it had following Commander Riker's departure and Data's death, and it was in this novel I feel it was restored. Faced with the renewed threat of the Borg, the ship is sent after an isolated vessel that is seeking slipstream capability, the newest and nearly limitless transportation technology that would make the collective practically unstoppable. While not a new plotline even to the litverse, they managed to find enough ways to make it plausible, placing it in a difficult-to-traverse and isolated area of space. At the same time, the crew is trying to learn to adjust to the latest changes in the command structure, including the newest addition for the mission at hand, Lieutenant Chen. With a tendency to blurt out off-color observations and talk when she's nervous, she comes across to some of the crew as undisciplined and not Enterprise material. But Captain Picard sees something in her that brings him to keep her on board, at least enough to give her a chance as the ship's contact specialist. As the mission progresses, Chen becomes a part of the crew, learning how to mesh with the rest of the characters as her unique nature brings a breath of fresh air to the crew. I really like the way the author handled both her dual nature as a half-Vulcan and the way people's expectations of your race can color what they think of you, whether it's fair or not for that to be the case. Probably the least Vulcan-like of any character in Trek, she has the genes, but was never raised on Vulcan. and it takes an approach that Star Trek has really not often taken with characters having Vulcan heritage, with the possible exception of Sybok. The book is also notable for bringing back the character of Hugh, which has not been seen since TNG's Descent Part 1 and 2. Superseded by the events of Picard, it was definitely one of the stories that no longer meshed with the new canon, but it was nice to see the character again, and having seen him on Picard gave me a mental picture of what he looks like now, so it really helped the story in my mind. What I didn't know at the time was that the book is also the novel immediately preceding the Star Trek Destiny trilogy. Definitely the finest Trek books ever written, at least if you ask me. A story of the all-out attack by the Borg, it was the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame of the Star Trek Litverse. So it was nice to see how all that was set into motion. In conclusion, definitely a book I was glad to have gone back and read. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, click the subscribe button and leave a comment below. Catch you later.